Okay, I'm Ofek, and I'm right now in Amirim. Amirim is a 50-year-old village in the mountains of the Galilee. I live here on a property with we're 4 generations. My grandmother lives here and my daughter, and other members, with 4 generations living here. Cohabitation. So I think what's assisting me in choosing alternative paths is, in terms of how I was raised, is a combination of being born to young parents that were fairly liberal for their time, that have both artist qualities in them and uncompromising qualities and stubborn qualities, and being the firstborn and being raised as they were young, those qualities were most alive during that time. And a lot of traveling. My parents moved with me to many places. They moved me from different schools, so I was used to being an outsider, at least for a part of time, and also being the different one. If I was in America, I was the only one who didn't speak English at first, and if I was in back here, then I was the only one who was more Star Wars oriented, while the kids my age were more still watching Western movies. I was doing ew ew and they were doing pew pew. So, and I was raised vegetarian. My daughter is 5th generation vegetarians. So today is not that unique, but when I was a kid, I was just used to eat differently, and food by its nature has a very bonding qualities. People, even the most loose communities, gather around food in their weekly plenum or something. So I was used being an odd bit, and the way society is programmed to react to the odd ones, feelings of threat, of rejection, of humiliation, and later on also learning that the same qualities can also be used to lead for change and to actually get positive attention. I noticed that my way of living is constantly evolving, and it's not like one choice I make overnight, but as I travel and expose to different ideas, I notice I have a level of openness in me and actually like eagerness to learn about different ways to solve different problems. I feel like I'm growing when I'm learning of another way to handle relationships or diet or make decisions together. So I would say that even though there's some kick of doing something odd and something different, it's not the initial drive. The initial drive is curiosity, and then some kind of identification that sounds right. Somehow it fits with the way I see other things. So or it doesn't sound right. So when we got pregnant, I have one daughter, and we got pregnant and it was unplanned, and we had to make some decisions. It was pretty obvious to both of us that the model of father, mother, children, father, mother go to work, children go to school, see each other at dinner and weekends, living in your own house with your own vacuum cleaner. Something there seems very wasteful and lonely and isolated. Yeah, so it didn't sound appealing to us. It wasn't something we felt a sense of like identifying. This is something that fits me. So we set out on a tour, and this was both of our drive. I don't want to take credit just for me, but this is on a tour to see what other people have found or created a way to grow and raise, grow themselves and raise their children, and something that maybe feel more suitable for us. So we read when we set out to the world to see how people are living differently. I remember we were inspired by the permaculture movement, and we decided we want to go to Australia. That was our first idea. However, we had some awareness already about the use of air travel, and it's a very high cost, both ecologically and mentally. What happens when the journey is unnatural, in a way that you just kind of hop from one place to the other? It's more like taking an elevator, or the journey is more important than the destination. So the air travel is something we kind of crossed off to just emergency cases only. We didn't want it to rely on it at all as a mean of transport. So it forced us to be more linear in how we planned the trip. And when we went to the port of Eilat to find a ship in the direction of Australia, the second intifada just started a month before. We were in Eilat in December. The second intifada started in November 2000. So there was basically no traffic here, and the last boats to Greece left. So we changed our plans, and we visited a few of the southern community. We visited Samar, we visited Neot Smadar, we visited Lotan. This is what's nice about not traveling with air travel, is that in Hebrew there's something called Bali. I feel like, it's like a very impulsive way of asking for something. It's called Bali, and our culture, the Western culture, is very used to this Bali mentality. So if I feel like I want a piece of candy, I just go and get the candy. I feel like flying to India, I go fly to India. And when I noticed that when we decide to free ourselves from certain kind of technology or any habitual thing, especially the habitual things that are tied down to freedom. So like for a lot of people, flying to India equates in their head as something very free. So when I re-inspect that and put it aside for a second and say, wait a minute, what if I do something else? And so I notice that many times I discover a greater sense of freedom. That's actually, it's like these technological solutions come to the Bali need, yeah, to the impulse and the true need of freedom and travel, and they come and they kind of succumb it. Yeah, is that the word, succumb? Or they give it some relief, but they don't really address it in a deep and meaningful way. So suddenly, when we can't fly to Australia, and that's not an option, and first of all we go and check the boat, and then when you look for the boat, it depends on what's the political situation in the region, and that's affecting what we can or cannot do, or at least the availability of it. It requires a lot more difficulty to go that far in that direction. And then suddenly we are forced or encouraged to look actually the communities that are under our nose. We were in the south of the country, and we didn't go see Samar or Neot Smadar or Lotan, and after visiting dozens of communities in the world, these were exciting communities than ever, and we learned a lot of important things in all three of them. So that was, this is something that like you get the rewards very quickly. You decide not to fly, and suddenly there is things under your nose that you haven't noticed before. I live here in this village, and I still discover places I haven't been to that's only walking like an hour walking from here. So my life today is a lot more local. But back then I still had that bug of traveling far, and we went to, we decided to take one of those last boats to Greece. And we ended up touring Europe because of that. Another liberating limit that we put on ourselves is a budget. It was important to us that just because we are coming from a background that's pretty privileged, I mean, just the color of our skin and our ability to speak English gives us some privilege. It was important to us to not experience the world just through that privilege, and we wanted to see how we can enjoy the world despite the privilege. So we put a budget limit of $400 a month, maximum expenses on all things that we spent back then, and most of the time we spent a lot less than that, most of the months, and it wasn't hard, but it did. We couldn't. It went together with the flying. We couldn't just make impulsive decisions just because we have access to money or can ask a relative for money, and that meant that we traveled slowly, and we stayed for a while in different places, and we hitchhiked, and we did a lot of gleaning and a lot of work trade. Another thing that I noticed that once we traveled from community to community is that we are living a plant-based lifestyle, meaning that our food and clothes, we strongly prefer that they will come from first-hand plants and not second-hand plants, through animals. They're moral, environmental, and just taste reasons for it. So there's a lot of back to the land communities that are very animal husbandry based, and if our diet is based on a lot of greens and they have goats, it means that there will be very little greens for us because it's all being converted to dairy. So we did make, communities that were very animal based. We kind of crossed off unless they were really interested otherwise. I remember we were very curious about communities that encourage different style of relationships and not just monogamous heterosexual default contract that you can download from the internet. And what else? Anything that had to do with low impact living and political activism. I guess we were really inspired by the communities that seem to have not a narrow, okay, we are now back to the land and we take care of ourselves, but how we can still go to land, live a high quality life, and still be involved in political action, and also not be just like head solution, permaculture, design, agriculture, machines or bicycles, but also heart and emotional and spiritual growth. So we were very happy not to plan too far ahead, because we noticed that in this style of traveling there's a lot of unknown parameters, and it's much more joyful and actually essential to be able to adapt to changing ever-changing reality and new discoveries, or things that we thought exist and don't exist anymore. It's just very, very dynamic, the scene, very, very adjusting.